All right, so we'll get started, and if somebody wanders in during the introduction, that's just fine. Welcome to It's Copperhead season number 8. We're very excited today to have MC Hyland and Kelly Hoffer here to show us what has come of a few months of collaboration and bouncing ideas, and just sharing their poetic brain spaces. There's going to be links. They both have ex multiple and exciting new books out. So there'll be a good chance to support two brilliant poets. For those of you maybe who don't know, it's Copperhead season has been this kind of loosely growing thing that sort of started as something slightly different, but has become a thing where Danica Stegman, my co-host, and we have gotten people to agree to a sort of poetic blind date of some number of months where they come in, get to know each other a little bit as poets, have some time to think about collaboration, about performance. And then I think all we ask of you at this point is that you somehow share something of your collaborations with us. And it's taken very different shapes in the past, and I'm excited and always surprised to see what shapes it takes on the night. So here we are. One thing we do, unless I've forgotten anything, Danica, this is the part of the show where I ask Danica if we forgot anything, or vice versa.
I think you got everything.
Okay, so that's the gist. If you'll happen to be at New Orleans Poetry Festival a month and a half from now, we'll have a little get together there related to Copperhead season, and we'd love to see anybody there. Um, but if you're just here for tonight, it's going to be good. And for those of you Copperhead loyal crowd members, first thing we do is solicit snake stories from the performers and or the crowd. So if you've got a snake story and you want to start working out in your head, you can do that now. But I think we do have two snake stories from our performers. Did we set an order for the delivery of snake stories? I can't recall. Um, Kelly, you're in my first square. If you wouldn't mind performing,
Yeah,
or not performing, rather just relating your snake story first.
yeah. I'm happy to talk about my snake story, especially because my snake story features one of the people in this Zoom room, my father, Fred Hoffer. So my snake story is that when I was 16, my father was on well, for many years of my life, my father was on a mission to eradicate kudzu from the park across the street in Memphis, Tennessee. And he sometimes dragged me with him to do that under duress. And he was cutting down some kudzu using a chainsaw from a big tree. And I saw this flash of red, and I was like, oh my God, my father has cut himself, and we're going to have to go to the emergency room because he's just chainsawed off an arm. And in fact, what actually happened is that he had cut this snake in half, and the snake fell onto the forest floor, and then like the two parts kind of like wiggled away from each other. So I was both relieving and disturbing at the time, and that is my snake story. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. I mean, maybe we learned something about collaborative performance in the wriggling away, perhaps. Who's to say? MC, let's hear yours.
Yeah, the subject of my snake story is also in the Zoom room. So in the first couple of years that Jeff, my partner, and I were dating, we went on a road trip to the Badlands. And we got there and we decided to go for a hike right away. And there were all of these signs that said rattlesnake country. And we're like, oh, I wonder what you're supposed to do about that. And then we went on a hike in sneakers and shorts, which is the thing you're not supposed to do. And so we were like about halfway through 1 mile or 2 mile loop, I forget which. When Jeff basically like almost stepped on a snake that was sunbathing across the middle of the path. And so from a couple feet away, I saw the rattlesnake like rear up and heard it rattle and like go for his ankle. And so I panicked and I screamed. I was like, run, run, run. And he ran away. And then we were in a path through like really tall grass that we knew there was at least one rattlesnake in. So we were just kind of like trapped 10 feet from each other on this path for like 15 minutes until I could work up the courage to like wade through the grass and get to him. And he was incredibly elated by this brush with death. And I had like a very intense adrenaline crash right afterwards and was grumpy for like days because I just kept envisioning having to like carry him out and suck rattlesnake venom out of his ankle. But he is fine. We're all fine.
And I'm glad for that. Thank you so much, MC. I think actually another poet, Hannah Warren, told me that there should be no attempt made to suck out poison, no carving an X between the two prongs of the bite. The answer is go to the hospital. Um, so if we can do a little bit of PSA on being snake fit, that's what you should do.
Lindsay Webb says true! Exclamation point in the
Yes.
chat.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Danica and I really set out to educate people about snakes. The poetry is sort of secondary. But now we're to that thing I just diminished. So let's talk about poetry now that the snake education is done. So let me, there will be the bios posted in the chat. And actually, it might be easiest for me to read them from there because I'm on a strange computer. And we're going to do both the bios at once. And then we will get to the reading performance. So the first bio here. Kelly Hoffer is a poet and book artist. She is the author of two full-length collections of poetry, Undershore from Lightscatter Press, 2023, very great blue book, and film series from Pitt Press, which just came out this week. So hit the little confetti things. As well as the microchap, the photo I don't write about from Tilted House in 2025, another very beautiful book. I can advocate as well. Some really lovely design from Tilted House. I'm reading extra material here, aren't I? She currently teaches in the MFA program at the University of Michigan as the Helen Zell Visiting Professor in Poetry. And Oh, there it is. MC Hyland. They is the founding editor of DoubleCross Press, a poetry micropress. MC is the author of three full-length books of poems, Walks and Weathers from Beauty School Editions 2025, The End from Sidebrow 2019, and Neveragainland from Lowbrow Press 2010. And a book of short essays, The Dead and the Living and the Bridge, which has a similar blue hue to maybe parts of the cover of Shore, right? Is there some color overlap here. And that was from Meekling Press from pretty much about the same time, 2025. Fourth book of poems and lyric criticism, A Book of Borrowed Light, will be published by Thirdhand Books in 2027. And that is another thing worth popping the confetti. Holding MFAs in creative writing and book arts from the University of Alabama and a PhD in English from NYU. They live and work in St. Paul, Minnesota. And we will also have links to an organization, Stand with Minnesota, where you can do just that by clicking and following up on their multiple ways to support there. So with no further ado, I'll let y'all kind of take over and do what you need to do in sharings of screens and performance. I'm excited to hear from these two brilliant poets, and I'm sure you're all in for something good.
Hi, so I think we agreed that I was going to kind of explain both like the structure of tonight, but also what we've been doing together for the past few months. And I do just want to emphasize that we have perfectly color coordinated books. These are the books that Kelly and I have published in the last, I don't know, year plus. There's a lot of light blue going on. I didn't realize until I set them all down on my desk that they're kind of they're color coordinated friends. So since I ridiculously had two books come out in 2025, and Kelly had a book that came out earlier this week. Official launch date was Tuesday. We wanted to kind of use the time that we were spending together to really delve deeper into each other's work. And we decided that what we wanted to do was kind of read each other's writing, and then each of us would take the other's writing and kind of try to reverse engineer it and make some writing prompts that we would then both do sort of half together, like in a little Zoom room, and half we would like start writing together, then we would finish things on our own. So we met 4 times. We each have 4 pieces that are at least in progress, if not finished. And what we're going to do today is we're going to each read from our new books. So Kelly's going to read from Fire series first, and then we're each going to read a poem that we wrote in response to prompts in response to Kelly's writing. So I'll read one, and then Kelly will read one, and then I'll read from my book, and then we'll each read a poem. And after we read the things we wrote together, I'll share the prompts. I have a little what is it called? Slideshow, so that you can see kind of where the poems come from. But I'm going to now hand it over to the magnificent Kelly Rose Hoffer.
Jazz hands. Thank you so much, MC. I was really intimidated by that explanation, so I'm so glad that you did it so elegantly. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to start reading from Fire series, which indeed came out this week and is therefore a fire horse according to the lunar calendar. So, perfect. We like it when themes align. Um, okay. This first poem is called Fire Interval. 3 cranes, painted yellow, crest the mountain face. Fire. Below, the gas barbecue on the hotel deck wears a little coat for storage. Fire. On the trail, we talk about strip club bureaucracy and department stores, and I find a flower called Pretty Face. Fire. A strange name for a theater, a strange name for a lion. Fire. Adam, calling the animals, calls himself. Fire. I forget my body for a minute. Fire. Back at the resort, I watch a video of someone's hands tapping an overturned ceramic vessel to center it on a wheel for trimming. Fire. The video tells me to hold my fingers at 3, 7, and 10 o'clock. Fire. Angels keeping busy, tidy needles in heaven's corner. Fire. The labor of the spinning disc. Fire. Fire. Adam names the lodgepole pine before he has need of shelter. Fire. I watch a video from above. Fire. A pool I cannot sound. Fire. I think, fire, not for the first time. Fire. Of Adam without interior. Fire. Adam with no rooms to enter. Fire. Adam with no rooms to offer. Fire. What would he make of my face, crowned in fire, fire, fire? An exit without a room to feed it, and who is roaring through? Fire. Evening'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. So Adam came up in that poem, and Eve is about to come up in the next poem, and Eve, you'll find, is relevant to some of the prompts that we wrote to together, towards together, something like that, right? So this is actually 2 poems in a series. They form a little bit of a diptych. And the first one is called Eve on Fire, the Hymn, as in Hymn. And then the second one is Eve on Fire, the Siren. Eve on Fire, the Hymn. For years, I'd advocated for a horizontal transcendence, a body that wasn't mine, I was ready for. I paid for what I didn't know, a piano, plays itself in a cavernous mall. So you have desire, what's next? There's more and then there's less, a black streak across a tree. Something arrived and it was too much. Something smaller survived the burning. The wind makes a flag of the geyser, carrying its white water across the sky. What does water stand up for? I paid to know a body that wasn't mined. Come to me for what you can't take out of me. The surviving thing, the smaller for it. Lilies rise up out of water. Where's the ground? above their spindling reflections. He told me to rise up was redundant. I told him falling was a kind of birth, and the tide was big enough for both of us. Eve on Fire, the Siren. I wrote horizontal transcendence, but it is ecstasy, the thing I protect from language. The most precious outpourings nurse a jolt, spinning inward toward a diamond, refusing duration, but I keep on being and can't help. The mirror over my shoulder. Is the woman in the pain one of the captured? The internet a giant pool, and I go there to drink. The internet of its substance. I search out the lilies I found in a photo, coming out of water. They require a flood to flower, but are not water. They are not water lilies. Lies the woman in pain. And what else would she be? Only true, like my mind, in the named world, a figment in the literal. Two men tell me two somethings and ask me to arbitrate, but what is your name and where can I live? Where the Medusa is not a woman captive in the desert. She is a cactus and is not a woman, a callus budding from her side, the magenta fruit, the waxy skin pocked, an animal buckling into its habit. Is not a woman, is not a woman. And here's an image of spindles and fangs, the shadow of a foot stepping on a diamond, pattern that warns of is not a woman, poison. There's some snake vibes in that one, which I'm now realizing I was not. Um, okay, this next poem is a poem in three parts, and it was an exercise in accumulation rather than erasure. So I started with a kind of like bare bones skeleton and then continued to add language. And so you'll hear the repetitions, I hope. Blame. I want him. He finds me, the thing, on fire. Flame. I tell him I want him. Want, want, want. He finds me, his, the thing. I am the thing wanting. He won't want. Fire. Old flame. I tell him what I want. I want him to tell me what I want. I want what I want to be what he is. I want to be his wanting. I am want to want. He wouldn't. He finds me wanting. I am his if he wants, if he's wanting. I am always the wanton thing, wanting. He won't will to want. He hangs fire. Funny story about that poem, which maybe I shouldn't share because it maybe makes me look ridiculous, is that when I first sent it out for, submission, I misspelled wanton as wonton. So, you know, stay humble out there, folks. Um, yeah, okay. I just have two more. A really short one, um, and then a little bit of a longer one. Okay. In the early dark of morning, the eels, sorry, I'm going to start that over. Whew, starting over. In the early dark of morning, the birds made an eel's nest with their voices, trills ribboning to silver, tails plashing in and out of deep and deeper liquid. The black air carrying its frenzy to me, wet and slickened. Roiled, I woke to the sound with its glinting carom. I knew light was still far off. That's my partner's favorite poem. He's in the background and he just did the little snaps for me. He thinks it's really metal. Okay. Last poem. Thanks so much for, yeah, I don't know why I'm doing the thing where like, thanks so much for coming, but I'll be here for another 30, 45 minutes. Okay. Pygmalion iteration. If I am a bird, I am a pigeon. If you are a bird, you are a dove. If I am a fountain, I am dyed green for a holiday. If you are a fountain, you are filled with coins. If I am a pigeon, I am molting. If you are a dove, you are pearl white, molten, and phoenix boned. I sit on your ledge and pull change from your belly. If I am a woman, I am an animal. If I am not an animal, what am I? If you are an animal, you are the magpie who catches himself in a mirror, a round yellow sticker on your feathered throat. I am a whatnot with a beak. I am a palm with glinting teeth. If I am a voice, I am a body. If you are a voice, you are an echo of an animal. You are an animal if you are an animal crying. If you are a celestial object, you are a sun, burning the film of dew off a summer's lawn. If I am a face, I cry into my hands until my eyes disappear. If you are a face, you are a mouthless cliff. If I am a mollusk, I am the poison mussel, cooked and firmly shut. If you are a mollusk, you are pearlless. If I am a celestial object, I have forgotten. If I am a pearl, I was born of sand. You are not a pearl, and I open my mouth to forget the man of you. I try to climb you without footholds. You shift away from my hands. My face becomes an animal, crying. If I am a dune, I am shaped like a slick of ice cream. I taste sweet. I breathe salt. If you are a dune, you are shaped like a cloud. Thank you so much. And I think now MC's going to read a poem.
Yes, I had to find the clapping emoji first, though. So this is a poem called A Guide for Further Cutting, which I maybe finished today, but maybe it's not finished. We'll see. Tangled greenery where a door might be, a lone climbing vine-like plant in the wild tannins of night. Each brightest point repels the eye brought low, seeking shade, blistered, blown. White lead and zinc fall along the edge, each house flattened in component parts, each snow-sharpened edge applied to sky's bright ground. Each small camera holds the entirety, mechanical eye, dreamer's eye toothed along one surface, sharpened on the other, commanding where sun streams from a lampshade in long beams, where each egg-shaped finial's cantharid luster dazes everything outside the frame's edge. Discarded clothing, marine layer rising over morning's compromised surface, crystalline and not too permanent. How mystery blooms in each dead window against the room's blue sheen. Glass ladled over every surface. Indent in the pillow, a hand's mark in the duvet where someone slung themselves from sleep. Blur of wind and trees gloss over the whole scene as though drenched in the hot sap of Rus verniciflua, the lacquer tree.
I mean, I think that's why mess with it? It's great. Okay. And then I'll read this poem, which has a note that it says that it's in collaboration with John Milton and MC Hyland. So just FYI. Okay. The hour of supper. We labored to dress, to tend our enjoyed hands, redress the wanton wild, an invitation to the little luxurious restraint, an early present. We labor to dress, our tender hands red, restless, too little, too early, the present stolen, a way to redress, wanting. We labor to dress our joy in hands, resting on want, wild, peaked to luxury, early restraint. Consider abandon. We labor, we climb near each other day long to undress, or we lay born of restraint, our tender. Thus a wild fruit of breath gathers in the basket of our bed. We labor, we dress, newly trained by an unearned tender. I pay all day, new currency, his scent so near, a smoked and dimpled pear. And now I think it's MC's turn.
Yes, I'm going to very quickly, or I don't know, should I share all four prompts at the end? Is that, maybe that makes more sense
Yeah,
than
maybe.
sharing each
So we
after.
have to
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna not share my screen right now, but I will share it later. Um, oh my gosh, just such a true delight to get to collaborate in this way and to get to kind of re-enter through someone else's eyes. A bunch of writing. There's always a lot of time between when the book is written and when the book comes out into the world. And so it can feel really far away. Um, but so I'm going to read, I'm going to make a little sandwich of essays and poems, but I think maybe genre is a lie, but we're going to pretend for our purposes today that that's a real thing. So I have one piece that I put in both of my books that came out last year, which is maybe cheating. But it's called Essay on Weather, and since one of the books is Walks and Weathers, it's kind of the way into the poems about weather. And the other book is a collection of little tiny essays, so it made sense in both places. Yeah, power move. So Essay on Weather. I wanted to know about time, about change. My body had acquired certain ongoing pains. An effect of normal wear and tear, said the physician. On the bedside table, a history of extinction, and a phone that imbibed one crisis after another from the seemingly neutral air. Even slow violences hurtled toward reckoning, time puckered and creased under many ineluctable pressures. I believed it was possible to watch what was even then passing away. In 1802, Luke Howard lectured the members of the Eschysian Society about the aggregate of minute drops called a cloud. He noted that a single cloud might progress through several modifications, cumulus, stratus, nimbus. Or it might, this is Howard's words, continue for a considerable time in an intermediate state, partaking of the characters of two modifications. And it may disappear in this stage or return to its first modification. This is no longer Luke Howard. The anti-Platonic clouds, knowable only a moment at a time, indiscriminate but fleeting, entirely specific and disloyal, as Frank O'Hara once described his eyes. In a museum in Oslo, we found a whole room of cloud studies. The small painted clouds transferred the light of another time and country directly into our faces. Though O'Hara thought that the clouds get enough attention as it is, it seemed as though we had never properly perceived their indexical charms. Against the onrush of history, I sought the register of clouds, of breezes, of minute shifts in actual or perceived temperature. Against the dying present, I accumulated a small log of instances. In this way, I peeled for moments at a time away from many avalanches of grief, descending at the scales of the person, the nation, the species, the planet. I did not find, like Frank O'Hara did, or like Lisa Robertson, a sincerity in this transcription of weathers, though I may, like the painter John Constable, have found in the sky a chief organ of sentiment through which some necessary fluids circulated. In the gap between sincerity and sentiment, a continuous, slightly shifting present. The weather, tacking between ethos and pathos, opened a space for the slow pouring off of language, of time. A light rain spattered the notebook page as sun caught a nearby ocean wave or glinted on the waxy surface of a leaf. Or, outside a window, light caught briefly in a red pine's peeling bark. My language possessed by adverbs of suddenness, of incremental change. The poet and translator Elizabeth Clark Wessel writes, "It is a constant problem in these translations, that word, suddenly. There are other ways of making things sudden in our grammar. A grammar capacious in its access to change. The sun's light tilts into the window, then tilts away." And now I'm going to read 3 short weather poems, which don't have titles. I wanted a language for passion that involved no touches to a body. The day gave me a calmly breathing sky. Husbandmen's and mariners' confused mass of simple aphorisms. Something like a silence composed of many quiet songs. Thin wisps of cirrus striate the north, this record-keeping inadequate to the fluidities of time. A man's voice urged me to carry this awareness. Ocean's shifting pH, buoy's semi-regular moan. This stillness felt empty but was filled with progressions. Into the 18th century gap between aphorism and system, a philosopher's methodical nomenclature arrives. Some part of the day still opens inside your breath. Cargo ships like small cities on the horizon. As in the paintings of Claude Lorraine, bright distance pulls the eye. I want to know what form is. I want the weather to show me. The sun eases itself towards setting, a sound the present made against your body. Had I come far enough into the luxury of speech? I was a weather of pleasure, a weather without content, a weird rain of infinitives. The sky wisped over both high and thin, voices of swallows, voices of gulls, an ocean, an air, what light you are made of, coming over rocks. I was under a weather of explanation, speaking quietly about what blows through. I walked to the end of the public, where the public reaches the waves. Sky more cloud than clear, though the clouds are thin, bluish. Pleasure boats splash the boundary with long and curving wakes. What space is owned? What time is owned? How debt looms always overhead. One large slab rocks slightly in slow waves. I wished to account for my various unspoolings. Wind steady, then swinging off to the far right. In a bright mist of inwardness, time flows over and alongside. Long humming without visible referent. Small rain cuts in. And then the other half of the book, Walks and Weathers, is walks. And they're poems that I took a walk with people, and then I would write them a poem. And I wanted to read one of the people that I took a walk with. I did a series of 10 walks along the Mississippi River in the summer of 2016, from the Twin Cities down to Hastings, which is the town that my partner grew up in. And I took a walk with his mother, with my mother-in-law, who just passed away actually exactly 1 month ago. No, sorry, 1 month and a few days ago. But we rescheduled this reading. We moved it back a little bit because she was in hospice on the day that we originally planned to read, I think. So this is a walk for Najeen Peterson, and it's a walk that we took in Levy Park, which is along the Mississippi River in downtown Hastings, Minnesota. And we took this walk in late June 2016. How is a river like a life? Time mostly moves one way, though maybe when you reach the river mouth, a tidal flow moves in. A novel I read as a teenager followed the last days of a woman in her 90s, mostly spent in a long-lost summer decades before. Things at the source move fast, then slow down. A few days ago, my friend said, somehow I got old, though I never noticed it happening. I don't feel any different. This is something we all say. How strange to be someone's mother, wife, boss. You show me a photo, the front yard of your house, now the southbound lanes of a highway running parallel the river. That little girl with pigtails, blurry, you. River dweller, you show me the new park with the pride of a local. We walk the labyrinth and read all the signs. We think about life as seasonal floodings. You've been preparing for your 55th class reunion, and I put it in this poem to mark time. Remember the day your class was let out to the riverfront to watch the spiral bridge fall. To stay in a place means carrying its history in this way. You say the river made you. You're a girl with pigtails balancing your way across the peanut track rails, or you're a fertile floodplain cleaving through the country's center. You're a city reflected in soaked cornfields seen from the highway. I wrote, a life is the floodplain, but correct myself. A life is the flood. It's plain. It's what spills over, and it's also the land. Silt and minerals, reclaiming the corn and remaking the soil. I've been watching Paul Robeson singing Old Man River, his deep weariness and beautiful voice, in which skill and something deeper vie. In that song, the river is what doesn't have to work, what just keeps rolling along, what knows and is remembered while people disappear, soon forgotten. But people also make the river. They change its shape with dams and levees. We're made and making. We roll through time, generation to generation. You get the river in your blood, and then you pass it on. Um, and then I'm going to finish with an essay on ink. I'm a letterpress printer, and I get real nerdy about the materials used in letterpress printing. So we're gonna finish. We're gonna finish with some ink. Essay on ink. To place ink in a series of small dots off the palette knife's corner. Then to flip the press's switch, sending cylinders into motion. A pattern of dots smooths first into vertical stripes, then into a thin and even layer. First, you learn to add ink by eye, and then by ear, listening for the hiss between rubber and metal. You learn to feel thickness with a palette knife, then to draw the knife's corner through. Will the ink's shoulders slump or stand? Shake in white powder to thicken it, carried from a silver tin on the wide edge of a popsicle stick. You raise and lower the rubber rollers as the thickness of stripe on the metal lollipop demands. I learned all this with my hands, eyes, ears, and taught it with my mouth, hands. To recount it in writing, I conjure sense memories, a smell both sharp and wet, a machine's sibilant hum. When I was young, I knew little, but still I wished to write. I filled notebooks and notebooks, saying so few things in so many ways. Now, not all that my body knows quite makes it into words. I doubt what I've learned in print shops, turning to the internet for confirmation. I say to the book history students that technology is not only metal type. It's not just the raised letters in an alloy of Johannes Gutenberg's making. It's also the wine press, the ink thick enough to sit atop. The peculiarly glittering blacks of the Gutenberg Bible, linseed oil, graphite, copper, sulfur, lead, titanium. Lamp black, egg white, and oil. Pilgrims' badges had been printed before, and whole books from wood blocks, ceramic and metal types in China, Korea, among the Uyghurs. Bisheng's pine resin, wax, and paper ash. If ink had not existed, someone would have needed to invent it. Though ink existed, someone always needed to invent it. Lampblack, oak gall, hawthorn, wine, iron salts, fish glue, bone black, carbon, turpentine, walnut oil, iron, ochre, gum arabic, Maya blue, verdigris, cinnabar, aquamarine made from lapis lazuli. In a workshop on manuscript illumination, I apply small dots of glare, moisten them with my breath, and tamp down gold leaf with an emery stick. An action proximate to ink. The gold waves violently as I exhale. In the archive, I find John Clare's ink recipe. Write its number on the form I've been handed, photograph it. This is the recipe. Take 3 ounces of bruised nutgalls, illegible, into a pint and a half of rainwater, let it stand for 3 days, then put in 1.5 ounces of green coppers and a piece of stone blue and shake it up every day, and it is fit for use. This ink, once blue and now brown, is slowly eating through the papers he wrote on, leaving thin spots or air where his words have been. Thanks.
MC, I just love your writing so much. It's just
Thank you. I love your writing.
I think this is a moment to maybe really thank the two coordinators for putting us together. It felt like a really thoughtful and lovely pairing. And the poem I'm about to read, I have far less of a background in printing than MC, but a little bit of one. And then this next poem actually does traverse some of that territory. Okay. So, as a reminder, this was a poem written in response to a prompt that I wrote in response to MC's writing. Okay. 106. History of working in lead. Small pricks on the finger pads collect a shining dust. Come morning, mullioned glass edges in to shroud any nobody, me included, in a capelet of satin light. An elegant poison garment trickles into the ear like radio? Rodeo? Ticker tape fantasia, gilt frame leaf shock. An artist splashes corners with alchemy's logic. Small-scale cupellation extracts native silver. One more round with the lasso tied, as I am still to the arena of the punch clock, hands akimbo performing who for but Daddy institution, Daddy Godhead. The question stands, am I milkmaid, rouged on various cheeks, metal bound by an efficiency rictus? I've been warned about dressing in a gown of true desire. When in a house of limbs, give the paint a surface to cling to, become the flaking idol. I've been warned, when setting type, keep the letters out of your mouth. And indeed, I did have my first letterpress teacher told us a story about one of his instructors who used to hold type in his mouth while he was setting type, and he was like, "Don't do that because it's poisonous." So, yeah.
Yeah. It's true that we're both letterpress printers and we both got to write a nerdy poem about it, which is very exciting. Oh my God, that stresses me out even just the thought of someone keeping lead type in their mouth. And this is my poem in response to Kelly's prompt. You get it. You understand. This is called Death is a Card of Transformation. And it just has a sort of like a date and location tag, which is St. Paul, January 2026. Mysterious moisture on the tabletop and pitted snow from 2 days' melt. A ship sails across dark countryside, lake or field flat blue-green of a dead king's robes. Beyond the window, mottled gray, a crown upturned on fallow ground, horse's red eye. Her sheets red too, as roses in children's hair, or roses on a priest's cope as horses' eyes. Her sheets shift with each counted breath. This body not so easy, after all, to leave. 15 degrees feels like 3. Warm air pushed through walls. 5 red spots in the zoomed-in map. Critical. 2 not yet confirmed. Each dot a photograph or video, pickups, tinted windows, whistles and shouts. Someone pulled from their house, car, life. Dark, burbling ice along the walk. White rose on death's black flag hoisted over the king's body. Death of the state. 2 children covered in roses leaning away. A neighbor posts a list. Needed. Diapers, shampoo, cooking oil, rice. How the front hoof lifts to show the horseman on the march across fallow field and past the fallen king, his crown, bright glint from off the garage roof. Rose of Jericho half unfurled, mint resurrected from dried twigs, furring out with tiny leaves. In her room, she waits for the horseman as a weak sun arcs over the house behind clouds and salt crystallizes in the boot tray. A road or river winds away from the downed king, the gray-sailed ship sailing on smooth water, which might almost be grass, to which the horseman will return us each. Child, king, priest, my loved one breathing hard through her final days, myself, at the window and on the card, the girl who turns from the scene, eyes closed, to show us her whole impassive or blissed out face. Oh, wait, and I think it's my job to show our prompts now. Um, thank you guys all so much for coming. Thank you so much, Jason, Danica, for pairing us. I'm about to share a couple slides. Uh, oh wait, I can make this a slideshow and that's gonna look prettier. So I tried to divide them up so that you can see the slides in the order of the poems that we read. So the poems that we wrote in response to Kelly's poems. I'm realizing that probably in everyone's Zoom they have to like move all the little boxes of people's faces around. But this is a prompt. Oh, and I actually changed the order of these. So I'll show you a photo by this photographer. But this was a prompt that brought together. I was interested in the camera obscura and in the ways that Kelly's kind of thinking about like technologies of sight across both of her, actually all both her books and this like very beautiful chapbook printed by Tilted House from New Orleans. But so there's a photographer who like a big piece of his work is making camera obscuras and then photographing the rooms that the camera obscuras are projected onto. So this was a project that brought together looking at his photographs, looking through this weird old book I picked up at a book sale once called the Dictionary of Arts and Crafts, which is just like a dictionary of terms related to like whatever people thought included arts and crafts in the, I think, mid 60s. And then taking those 2 banks of words together and making a poem. And then, wait, how do I go to the next page? There we go. And then the poem that Kelly wrote was in response. So I kind of started from because the figures of Adam and Eve and the story of Genesis is really central to Fire series and shows up in a bunch of different ways, including in erasures of parts of Genesis. I'm really obsessed with the Eve and John Milton's Paradise Lost, who I think is like I know everyone loves Satan, but she's my favorite character. And I especially love there's a couple of scenes that she's in. And so we each took a passage from Paradise Lost where Eve is talking and made an erasure from that passage. And then we swapped erasures and kind of wrote out from each other's erasures. And then, Kelly, do you want to talk about your assignments?
Sure, happy to. Yeah.
Oh, and there's one of the photos by this is actually the photo that I wrote about in the poem that I read, but like that's what the camera obscura photos look like. There are colored ones too, but they're very distracting. And then yeah.
Great. Yeah, so I, since grad school, have been PhD school, have been really interested in Francis Bacon's catalog of histories. So this is Francis Bacon, as in the early modern, like natural science writer, not Francis Bacon, who I also love, the 20th century painter. So many Bacons to be in love with. But he was really, he had this notion of experimental history, and I love this quote that I put at the top, right? For the world is not to be narrowed till it will go into the understanding, which it has been done hitherto, but the and understanding is to be expanded and opened until it can take the image of the world as it is, in fact. So this notion that the world is like correcting our knowledge, I think was just a really fascinating idea. Anyway, so he has these catalog of histories that he thinks should be written, like natural histories, right? And so and the range of things is just wild. And so there are things like, so I took the history of working in lead, right? But there's also the history of rainbows, the history of salt, the history of things like basket making, right? And to be clear, he has written none of these natural histories. He's suggesting that this is work to be done. So it's a kind of aspirational or speculative document. And so the prompt is more or less to take one of those histories and then write a poem from it, and specifically a poem that's working through incremental change in the nature of like being attendant to the weather, um, as MC's work so beautifully is. So that's that one. And then this last prompt that we did, the occult season report, was started with us sort of writing in tandem just about our immediate surroundings, literally like what's happening out your window, um, or even your mental landscape, and then drawing a card at random from an online tarot card generator. I know nothing about tarot, which makes this maybe more exciting or less exciting because I end up just writing about the visuals on the card. And then spending 10 minutes to write in response to that card with whatever knowledge you bring to that, you know, um, set. And then using those sort of two free writes as germination points for a larger poem. Um, I hope it's obvious we're sharing these because we would, we're happy for other people to use them, right? Like we're excited. We're not trying to hoard this knowledge. We had a really great time. And so,
I'll actually
um,
maybe add the link to the
yeah,
chat, unless
yeah,
Danica has already done it, which is possible. No, I will add the link to the chat. One sec.
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, MC.
And I will just say it was so, I mean, I teach creative writing and I teach graduate students, and I have to, it was so lovely to write a prompt that was so tailored to someone's specific work, and also a prompt that was not had no pedagogical intention and was just about like making art together was truly lovely. Um, so I really appreciated that. It was a rich experience for me also, writing the prompts.
So do you all have anything else, or is that
I think that's our thing.
Yeah,
MC.
okay?
I
Great,
think we've
great,
said
great.
all the stuff that we planned to say.
Great. I didn't want to step in right before some more of that because in the past actually we have had people request extra poems. So if you haven't prepared an encore, then we can just go into a casual conversation about the work. I'll say briefly, like, I'm so happy with what y'all performed with this tonight, and it feels like it was such a generative collaboration. And it's sort of, I think Danica and I have both expressed in the past that we don't always know exactly how it's going to go. And I feel like this time, I feel like there are things I could have imagined that came out in the best possible way, like knowing the relationship that you each have to material work like letterpress and stuff like that, knowing that something like that might come out, but also then some wonderful surprises. So I'm so grateful to both of you for participating in this. Um, And Danica, I don't know, I don't want to step on your toes if you wanted to say anything or if you had a question to start out.
Um, yeah, thanks, Chase. I also loved this pairing so much. Like your work is very distinct, but like complementary in this really like expansive and fierce way that I cannot properly articulate, but it was like felt by everyone in the reading, I think. Um, and it was amazing because when you were responding to each other's prompts, it was like I could feel like your own voices were there, but then I could feel how it interwove with like the source material. And of course, I like knew the prompts were written after, but I could really feel it, and it was really cool. Um, I do have a question. It's a pretty like open-ended question. But I would just love to hear more about your experience of working with one another through the collaborative process and like that sort of resonance that I'm describing that I was like hearing but between your voices. Like, can you describe your experience of just like working with each other's work like in a little bit more detail? Um, just either how it like affected the way that you read your own books or like the ways that you were sort of generating the ideas for your prompts or your response poems.
I mean, I think I can start. Um, something that I think that I find really beautiful and really moving in Kelly's work is her commitment to kind of like form, like thinking about the space of the page, thinking about kind of like repetition, um, thinking, I think in ways that like because I'm meandering out of poetry and towards essay at this, over the last several years, I think something that I found really wonderful about getting to engage with like the full set of Kelly's published book or book-like items was that it really brought me back to an awareness of sound and form. Actually, both of the poems that I read are like syllabic poems, which is a way that I wrote like in my late teens and early 20s and haven't really come back to, but they're both like more or less 10-syllable line poems. And I think that, and I also was kind of trying to do a sort of weird rhyme thing in the first one I read, like very buried start of the line rhymes that like sometimes were there and sometimes were not, and sometimes got edited into a different place in the line. And I think for me, that came out of really spending time with Kelly's work, which I think is like so sonically rich and so like structurally complex. That was really wonderful. And I think having to kind of look at it and turn it into writing prompts also kind of like tuned up that attention for me.
Yeah, thanks, MC. I mean, I feel like I have not anything nearly as thoughtful to say, but also like just so much deep. I mean, one of the things that I was really struck by when I was reading MC's work, especially Walks and Weathers, was that we both just really love Lisa Robertson, or that's like a big presence in our lives, in our writing lives. And so there was this way in which I was like, kind of seeing, like I was in a bathroom looking in the mirror, and then I could see the person that was next to me right in the mirror or something like that. Like there was this kind of triangulation that was happening. Um, and I mean, I think one of the things that I really admire in MC's work is the movement that's in MC's work. There's just like such beautiful and but like subtle movement that happens. And so I think that was affecting how I was thinking about, how I progress through a poem. Because so often for me, the way that I progress is potentially something sonic. Um, and, but, thinking about paying attention to, the stepwise of a poem was really helpful and not the place that I normally sort of settle when I'm like generating, you know. So that was really instructive, I think. And also just there's a kind of comfort with going slow, like moving slowly, which I'm not always great at. And so that was also just really, really beautiful, and I'll also say that we haven't talked about this really except, in passing, but you know, MC was going through this big grief thing, and I have a big grief thing in my past. My first book is basically all about my mom, uh, her death, and like I'd been in that hospice place before, and so there was like also just this way in which life stuff was happening, and that felt like I don't know, a certain amount of like fellow traveler, and that was really special. So, and I think that comes out in the poems. Like the poems just felt really intimate in that way, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both of those answers on multiple levels, and was thank you for sharing that. Jace, go ahead.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, and I mean, if there are any other questions in the Zoom room, or Poet Laureate of New Orleans, Sean Monroe, is in here coming in and out of focus. So if Sean had a question, but Lindsay, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm trying to make sure my audio is working. Does this work? Okay. Um, I First of all, I loved everything that I heard. Like, what an amazing pairing. What an amazing evening. Thank you both. I I wanted to know more about how you guys feel about prompts because I feel like I have really mixed feelings about them. I'm also a teacher right now, and I feel like I've really resisted prompts in a pedagogical sense. I mean, Kelly, we've talked about this, where I think sometimes they can become like a crutch for students. But I personally, this semester, have really like um, used prompts a lot actually with my students, much more than I'm usually comfortable with. And I'm like frustrated to discover that it's actually working really well. Um, and so like I'm like dealing with my own mixed feelings about prompts, and I love that that's kind of where your collaboration focused because I loved I don't know, I like thinking about the question of like what is a prompt outside of a pedagogical context, outside of school. Um, and like what is like a friendship prompt or like or like a a collaboration prompt that's like really interesting to me to think about. And I think there's like a different energy where you're sort of like it's almost like a much more like there's like something more ritualistic there, like an invitation to like to that, or maybe even like an erotics of sort of like asking someone to do something that they don't know the outcome of yet. I don't know. There's like I think there's a lot there that I'd be curious to hear you guys talk about.
I also just say briefly, I think one of the things that really changed the texture of the experience for me is that they were prompts that we were doing together, right? So it's like I was writing a prompt that I thought would be appealing to me and also to MC. Um, and so there was already a sense of that kind of collaboration there. And I also think because it was so, I don't know, like I think sometimes when you're writing prompts for students, you're like trying to generate something and you like that can be really hard. But because this was also prompts that were prompted by reading, it was also sort of like this act of reception and sort of a deep sensitivity, hopefully. Um, and what the other thing that I'll say that I really liked about the procedure, which was OBS's suggestion, and so, credit where credit's due, is that we would begin, like we would always have kind of like a short time where we were meeting over Zoom and then we were actually starting the prompt together. Like there was some sort of like in tandem, like maybe Zoom cameras off, but we're like in the same space virtually doing 20 minutes of writing. And then there was the opportunity to take that after the Zoom meeting and turn it into whatever we sort of wanted to. I mean, I also think that so that was helpful for me. It made me feel like I wasn't so much in like a school setting. And then also, I think we both had an understanding that the prompts were beginning points, right? And so, like, I can sometimes like a prompt because it helps me disobey very specifically, right? Or like do the thing that isn't quite asked for, but there's enough structure that I um like that's an interesting friction suddenly. Um so that's what I would say. And that would be like something that, maybe you could try to tell your students like you're allowed to improvise, but there's so much anxiety about like getting the assignment right. So this feels quite different in that way.
Yeah, and I guess I should say like I am a writer that like I make prompts for myself. Oh, and I'm gonna tell my favorite Lisa Robertson story actually, which is that Lisa Robertson was like friends with one of my professors when I was doing my PhD. And so she came and visited this class I was in, and in the class we had read, I think we must have read like some of the essays in the like Office for Soft Architecture book, which I'm obsessed with. It's like my very favorite of her writing, and I wrote like a dissertation chapter about it. But it's a book that's a collection of writing that she was paid to write, right? Writing that she wrote kind of on spec, mostly for art galleries. And my professor, who had always been independently wealthy, was like, I mean, you had these assignments, but even if you weren't doing this as your job, you would still give yourself assignments, right? And you could just watch her face like try to process the idea of not having a job and of this person who thought that like you could write equally well and in the same way and the same kind of things if you weren't being paid to do it. And it was truly one of those moments where I was like, I don't know if the Academy is for me. Um, but for me, I'm usually giving myself kind of assignments, and they're slightly less structured than these. Part of what was really exciting about this was yeah, that we kind of started with this sort of um, writing together, which is also increasingly my favorite way of writing. And like the only way I could finish my dissertation was to have writing friends who I would have weekly writing dates with, and we would meet for like 2 or 3 hours and like say hello and then do whatever, like 5 to 6 Pomodoros together. Um, so for me, like the energy of writing with someone feels really generative and really like permission giving. Yeah, the stupid Pomodoro. But then you have timed when your chatting and snack breaks are going to be. In an ideal world, you do them in a place that's like a coffee shop by day and a wine bar by night. So after like whatever X number of Pomodoros, you get to get your glass of wine. But I do think what I like about I used a lot of prompts when I was teaching creative writing, and especially like the last school that I worked at, which was like n- not it was like a school where a lot of students, especially creative writing students, were like they were creative writing majors instead of English majors because they weren't really big into reading. And so the prompt in some way becomes a way to try to get people to engage with language who have like pretty specific channels through which language is arriving in their lives. If they're reading, they're probably reading genre fiction or they're reading fan fiction. And so I think I found prompts really pedagogically useful just in trying to break something open. But also that's um, that's how I experience prompts, and it felt like such a blissful luxury to be given, like to be placed in Kelly's hands in the way that like, when I arrived and I was like, I know I'm gonna write, and I know I don't have to think before we get together about what or how I'm going to write, and that just felt really nice, felt really special.
Yeah, I'll also just say that like we both had these stretches of exhaustion over the course of this collaboration. I mean, right, MC's in Minneapolis and had all this family stuff happening. I am currently very pregnant. And just like so there really was, I mean, I think we both felt that um this was the way that writing was gonna get done was if we had these kind of dates. And that it was a real act of generosity and sort of like gift to get to a space and have somebody planned your sort of like creative session for the day. And yeah, so that was, I think that kept us both in touch with a little bit of our like art mind, writing mind, at times where it would have been very easy to really totally disconnect from, that part of our lives. So,
Yeah, agreed. For sure. And actually, one of the things we said in our last meeting was kind of like, there's no way I would have written anything over this time if we hadn't been meeting. And that felt really nice to be like, well, I know every other week I'm going to see Kelly and we're going to write. So I can at least put that like anxiety about whether I'm writing, I can put that away. It's happening.
Yeah, I guess selfishly, then I'm glad that these poems exist. Happy for that. From the Zoom room or elsewhere, are there any other questions? If I might like specifically request like just like the briefest answer that comes to your mind, just because I don't want to like take up more of anybody's time. But I was so delighted by, and now seeing at the end, so some of this is coming from the prompts of like the Francis Bacon catalog, the letterpress stuff that I was thinking about what you called alchemical at one point and thinking about ink recipes, that both of your work has this kind of like way of making associative definitions and redefinitions of things, even like a phrase like um the one posted in the chat about the bird's song becoming a nest of eels. I know I'm mixing up the words there. Like that feels like this kind of like almost like naturalist like redefinition of things to like make sense of something that is stranger than like the knowledge can describe. Um, and so I'm interested just to hear briefly from each of you if you're like thinking about like technologies of knowing or technologies of seeing, you know, through this collaboration. I'm wondering if in that mode, do you think differently about ways of like unknowing, knowing, or re-knowing? Like how did like working together maybe change the way you approach those things that feel present in both of your work separately, but then like I think really came out in the collaboration?
I should say that my brain is like like I'm always really interested in how technology relates to knowing and unknowing and re-knowing. And and part of what this collaboration has allowed me to do is as Lindsay knows because she's my future publisher, I'm like working on finishing like returning to a book manuscript that is very much about like technology and knowing and unknowing and re-knowing. And so I think um what this project has done is I think Kelly often works a bit more metaphorically than I do. And it's funny, Kelly, I just opened your book and looked at lines I had underlined, and they're all kind of definitions, right? They're all like defining X as Y. Ownership is an obstacle to unletting. If we accept a position as the thing you own is the ghost that rules you. Those are two on one page. But like there are several other things that I've underlined um, that are definitions that let you see something new. And I think that that has been really helpful in doing this, thinking about like the book that I'm trying to finish is largely about film, but I'm also kind of trying to think about photography and a little new work that I'm making for it. And I feel really grateful to have um, the opening within that. Oh, thank you, Lindsay. To have the opening that working with Kelly has made in that thinking and writing.
and I'll maybe say that I think working alongside MC and also following MC's work has just made me come back to the essay as a form of knowing, unknowing, and re-knowing, right? In the very like Montaigne sense. And I teach an essay, like a lyric essay course, but I don't really consider myself someone who really does essay. That's not the thing that I do, right? But I do think I'm so excited about the movement of mind that it allows. And so yeah, I think that that's my short answer is just like trying to think through what the affordance of an essay is as something that is designed from the get-go to be kind of variable, or like a weather vane of mind or something, right? Like that it can move with that current. Um, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both so much again. And thank you everyone for coming. I would be so happy to hear this conversation continue. I'd be so happy to know that your collaborations would continue someday, even just trading of prompts. And maybe the conversation will continue in some way or form um, at NOPF this year, which is where the next Copperhead something will occur. But yeah, what a lovely pairing and such cool work coming out of it. So thank you again, both of you.
Thank you for the invitation. Really just a delight.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for matchmaking us. It was
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah.
We loved it.
Matchmaking, matchmaker, making a match. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, thanks for coming, everyone.